play button. Good to go.
Okay, you can start.
Hello, all. This is Patrick. Many of you know me. For those of you that don't, I'm Patrick O'Neill. I'm one of the admissions counselors and one of the DSOs, meaning designated school officials. Basically, it's a fancy term for we report to the government on international students and all of our reporting requirements. And with me, sitting next to me, is Jessica Himmelberg, and she is also one of the DSOs, and she's an admissions technician within the admissions office. We also have a number of our additional staff and DSOs with us here today that are going to be giving input and insight when you would like to. And so then at this point, I guess we'll start our presentation. What do you think?
Yep, sounds good.
All right, so should we bring up the PowerPoint?
Yep. Feel free to ask any questions as we go through this as well.
Yeah, that's what you expected.
Are you guys seeing the PowerPoint? Can somebody give like a thumbs up or let me know if that's what you're seeing? Okay, perfect.
Make sure everything-
Can everybody hear us okay? Are we talking loud enough for everyone? Thumbs up.
It's like we can't hear them, can we?
Well, they're all muted right now.
I can hear you guys. I don't know if you can hear me.
Awesome,
All right,
perfect,
thanks,
we can.
Lindsay.
Thanks, Lindsay.
All right, so our presentation is how to support international students. Yes, campus resources, designated school officials. On the Beatrice campus, we have Marianne Harms. On the Milford campus, we have Carrie Dieriksen, Taylor Hoder. Then on the Lincoln campus, we've got Jessica Himmelberg, Shannon Ibarra, Bailey Michaels, and Annie Holman. And again, I'm Patrick. The principal designated school officials, so where all the magic really happens is with Mike Pegram. If we do anything wrong and anybody goes to jail, it'll be Mike. So again, what we do is we represent and speak for the college on all matters relating, as it says, to F1 students. And we maintain the responsibility for the college to enroll non-immigrant students. Next slide. So again, an I-20, that's once we admit a student to Southeast Community College, an international student will issue what's called an I-20. It's also known as a certificate of eligibility. And it's that I-20, when the student receives it, they're able to then make a visa appointment at the embassy or U.S. embassy or U.S. consulate closest to them for a visa interview. So we admit students, but it's up to the U.S. government to decide whether they want to issue the visa so the student can actually come to the United States. And so the visa, if it's granted, it's called an F1 visa. So an I-20 can potentially lead to it receiving the F1 visa through the visa process. So again, schools admit students, the government determines whether the embassy determines whether the government's going to allow the student to enter the United States on that visa to study. Go to the next slide. So an international student, how we define an international student here at Southeast Community College is someone that wants to attend again on I-20, so therefore on an F1 foreign student visa. And they're here to study. So that's their primary goal, their primary purpose. We don't use this classification in referring to refugees, those who are granted asylum in the United States. We do not refer to that for anybody that might be a visiting student attending on another visa. We don't use the term international student, somebody that's a naturalized U.S. citizen or a holder of permanent residency, also known as a green card. So again, we use this term international student specifically for anybody on an F1 visa. I think we can go to the next slide. So international students, they have to provide a lot more documentation than our domestic students, our domestic student applicants. So an international student has to provide placement scores like all students do, math and reading and writing placement. They also have to provide certification of where they were born, what city they were born. That's within the last 2 years, a recent additional requirement the U.S. government requires that we collect. We'll have to have a copy of their passport, a copy of high school transcripts, college transcripts if necessary. College transcripts from institutions outside the United States are not actually necessary unless the student provides us official transcripts with official translations and they're seeking transfer credit. If we have students, and most of our international students who may have college already in an institution outside of the United States, most do not look for transfer credit, so we don't require the college transcript. Any international student that wants to transfer from one U.S. school to us, yeah, we do have to have college transcripts from U.S. colleges and universities. They may need to provide proof of language ability, and currently we accept the TOEFL or the IELTS, one or the other. And so that's a proof of ability to survive and do well in the U.S. College setting where English is the language of instruction, of course. So these are things that we definitely have to have. And when we say if necessary, if a student comes from a country where the only language is English, such as they're coming from the UK or they're coming from Canada, typically we're not going to require proof of language training, although there might be a caveat where if somebody's coming from Quebec and they're French speaking, we may require language training. So there's variations of what we'll require. It depends on that particular student. We have to make sure that the student has the ability to survive in the economy, so therefore have money to go to school, pay tuition fees, books, supplies, uniforms, whatever is needed for the program they're going into. But we'll also be able to live out in our residence halls, to be able to live in the local economy if they cannot get on-campus housing, and again all the other things that they would need to survive here. So again, we'll require bank statements from either the student if they're self-sponsored, or we'll require bank documentation from whoever the sponsor is. And then we also require an affidavit of support. So they have to prove the first year in the bank documentation, but they have to attest to the fact that they're going to have that support, or they're going to have the money if they're self-sponsored for each and every year of attendance here at Southeast. Additional requirements, again, we will have, as an example, a student at University of Nebraska-Lincoln that might choose to want to transfer to Southeast, and so then they'll have additional requirements. We'll need to know about their movements in and outside of the United States. So I-94, which is an entry and exit document. We'll need to know what their current visa is, and so a copy of their visa from their passport as well. We'll need a copy of the school that they currently hold an I-20 from. And then we also have a transfer in form documentation. So there's a lot of different things we'll require, and some additional things we'll require from transfer students from other U.S. colleges and universities to Southeast. Next page. So let's talk about timeline for success. And Jessica, why don't you talk about this?
Yeah, so our application deadline, meaning that all of our requirements must be submitted to the office, is 2 months prior to the start of the term. We do that so that students that are coming from outside of the United States have enough time to book that visa appointment and also book their transportation. They can arrive 30 days before the start of the term, so we want to allow enough time for them to go through all of that, but then also arrive in the United States in enough time to have some time before classes and those things start. So all documents must be received by the deadline. And then the deadlines we publish are on the International Student Checklist. And so if I can find out how to bring that up. So all of our documentation is, oh, it's not showing. Let me stop sharing. Share. Can you guys see the website? I'm good. Okay. So on the website, if you you can find all of this documentation if you go to admissions and then the admissions overview, and then scroll down and apply for admission. You can choose international student. There we go. And so this is going to list all of the steps for admissions, again, like Patrick just went over. But then if you come down here, you'll be able to download the International Student Checklist, which will again state all of the requirements, but it will also have the deadlines as well. And so we've recently moved to having the deadlines, kind of splitting them between the students that are outside of the United States, and then if you're a transfer student within the United States. If you're with a transfer student within the United States, we actually really the deadline's a few weeks to a month prior, and that is simply because it's easier to, you're already here, a lot of the requirements you already have with you, and so it's just a little bit easier to work with that current school to get you transferred over here.
The deadline for coming from outside the United States is, we think, fairly generous at with the 2-month deadline before the start of a term. But in reality, depending on where a student comes from, there may be, once we admit a student, they may have a 5-month wait to get a visa interview. So again, it can vary dramatically whether a student will, even upon admission, be able to make it here by the term they want to begin. On occasion, we'll have students that can't get a visa interview, cannot get a flight, various reasons, and so they may contact us and ask us to change their start date, and so we'll have them reapply for a future start date to give them more time to make arrangements or to get that visa interview.
All right, and then what drives the timeline? Again, just processing the documents, sending the I-20 to the student, embassy interview. Oh, thanks. Perfect. Embassy interviews, appointment delays, and traveling to the US. All right, and then now we're gonna move on to kind of maintaining, so a student is here on the I-20, has that F1 visa, and so now we're gonna kind of move forward to kind of the different between the students' responsibilities, advisors, coaching staff, and the designated school officials' responsibilities.
So to maintain the I-20 status, students need to check in with one of the DSOs at whichever campus is their primary campus upon arrival. And when can a student arrive? Could be anywhere from no sooner than 30 days to the start of a term, but you could have a student showing up the first day of classes as well. But they need to check in so you know they've arrived. One of the things that we do is we make sure that they understand their responsibilities, so how to maintain their status. We want to make sure that we collect current local contact information. Most times a student will arrive, we have their home country address, but they need to provide us with their local address. They always need to keep us up to date if they've changed addresses, they've changed phone numbers, they've changed emails. So they need to, again, on arrival, provide current information. But then again, that's an ongoing requirement to maintain their status, that we always know how to contact them. We'll have them complete new student enrollment like any other student. They'll go through, once they're in their program, they'll go through new student orientation like any other student as well. Once they've completed the new student enrollment process, some students will have completed the new student enrollment prior to arriving in the United States. Some will meet with their advisor after they've arrived and they've checked in. One of the key responsibilities that students have and that we monitor as DSOs, but also a key responsibility of the college advisors, is making sure that the students maintain full-time status, minimum 12 semester hours per semester. We'll talk about adjustments to that as we move forward. One of the key questions when students visit with the advisors is, and visit with the DSOs, can I work? It's fairly easy, simple process to work part-time on campus, 20 hours or less during the school year. The student will, apply for a college job. Quite often we'll just refer people again to the Career Services Office about part-time jobs, and they'll apply, they'll be hired, and then there's a process to complete with HR, of course. Sometimes students will then have to get their Social Security number that they'll need so that they can get paid and taxes taken out and all that good stuff. So there's a process, but it's fairly easy to, again, be able to work part-time on campus. And they can work full-time if during summer breaks, the big one, if the office they're working for on campus wants to keep them during the summer, during the break time, and then wants to have them work full-time, then that's allowed, but only during break times. Not allowed to work off campus. And again, they're not eligible for financial aid or for a work-study position, but any part-time non-work-study position they could apply for. college advisors, faculty advisors, staff responsibilities. Again, we have to make sure that students maintain full-time status. As it says there, if a student shares that they have changed their status, then you need to get them to a DSO. All the DSOs at Southeast on the different campuses, we work out of the admissions offices. And then we'll go over exceptions. If somebody's changed their status and no longer the 12-hour minimum applies to them, if they've changed visa statuses or something like that, maybe they are, again, still on their F1 visa, and we'll talk to them, the students, about whether an exception is allowed for them to drop below full-time. But they're pretty serious situations before we'll allow falling below full-time. We have to justify any decision to allow a student to fall below full-time. We have to justify that to the U.S. government in our reporting system called SEVIS. Students have to, the F1 students have to register and drop on paper every term with the advisor. We will remove the hold on the international students' accounts so that they can get registered with their advisor. And after they're registered, we place the hold back on so that a student can't accidentally, or sometimes it's happened intentionally, drop without notifying us. What we're doing in this process of requiring students to register on paper is really to protect the institution, but it's to protect the students so that we don't have to terminate a student, and we don't want to do that. So we try to be very careful through this paper process. So that's why the safeguard and the holds on the accounts in place. Students can only take one online class in achieving full-time status. So let's say they're 9 hours or face-to-face, that fourth 3-hour course, taking them to 12 could be an online course. Anything, say they decide they want to take 15 hours. Again, only one course to achieve full-time status, but that fifth course to take them to 15 hours could also be online if they wish. But 9 of those hours are going to have to be, in most cases, 9 of those hours are going to have to be face-to-face or hybrid. And where hybrid's okay and we allow that is that a hybrid course requires face-to-face component. So again, it is face-to-face. Maintain academic progress through advising. So one of the key things with advisors is to make sure they're taking courses that are applicable and necessary toward the degree and their goal. And again, the advisors will sign the registration and the drop-add forms. Again, international students need to be advised differently. Again, so again, if an international student has questions, if college advisors or any staff have questions, please have the students visit with us. And again, as far as advisors and other staff, please reach out to us so we can discuss whether dropping a course is allowable or not.
Yeah. So just some additional coaching staff responsibilities. Just a few things to know is all international students, regardless of athletics, are treated the same and have the same requirements. So if a student is coming here to be part of a team, they still have to provide all the same requirements as an international student who is not playing a sport. We just like to think of international requirements in the athletic processes as separate, and they do not rely on one another. Again, just to keep them separate and keep both processes in place and continue on with that. us as an office, we do not assume that a student is an athlete or is receiving an athletic scholarship until we have received the signed and completed athletic scholarship form from the coach. This goes into that bank statement and the affidavit of support form that students have to provide 25,000 US dollars in order to meet that requirement. And so, for example, if a student is on an athletic scholarship and may be receiving a $5,000 athletic scholarship, we have to have a form from the coach specifically stating that, so then we can communicate to the student that instead of 25,000, they need to provide 20,000 US dollars on a bank statement.
And to reiterate, the value of the scholarship has to have a dollar amount. It just can't say it's on scholarship. We need to know the dollar amount.
And then the designated school official, which is all of us that were kind of named previously. So our responsibilities are to process all of the required documents. We will inform program directors and initiate the registration hold. The hold titled INTL will be listed on the PERC screen. Once that hold is put on the PERC screen, then students will see that hold on their the hub, and so that will come across, and so they'll see that, they'll know what it's for and what they need to do to abide by that. We also check students' class schedules each term to ensure full-time status. So one of the things that we are moving to that we're really excited about is we have now a team that will work with our international students from prospect to the acceptance and issuance of that I-20. And so for those people, again, anybody can help you on the international team, but that would be Annie, Bailey, Shannon, and Taylor that are going to be kind of that first part of it. And then Marianne, Carrie, Patrick, and I are kind of the second part to that. And so we're kind of working with the students that are here and kind of helping them maintain their status. And so these are a few of the things that we'll do each term. So we check students' class schedules. So we actually just like a week ago, we did a pre-registration check. So we'll run a report, we'll check to see who's registered, and then we'll send them an email just reminding them that they need to get registered for the next semester. And then after each term starts, we have 30 days, so about 3 weeks into the term, what we do is we run that registration check again, and then this is when we will go into the SEVIS system, and we have to essentially register each student within that, verifying that they are taking full-time courses and that they are moving and progressing through their program of study. This is what keeps them active each term, also active within the SEVIS system. And then we will make recommendations for CPT and OPT. CPT is curricular practical training, which will allow if a program like culinary hospitality require an internship. And so for students that are in that program, we have to provide documentation to SEVIS recommending CPT for the student to be able to do that internship. OPT is optional practical training, and that usually comes after the student is completed with their program. And so students can apply for OPT 90 days before their program end date or 60 days after their program end date. Essentially what it is we recommend OPT. They fill out all the forms, send in their fee, and they are applying to be able to work up to 1 year in their field. And so once the OPT is approved, they will get their employment authorization card, and at that point they can start applying and working for a company until that OPT ends. We encourage students. OPT is a great opportunity. We encourage students to kind of start thinking about halfway through their OPT, kind of what is the next step. They do have a grace period after that OPT ends, but we encourage them to start, are they going to transfer to a 4-year? Are they returning home? Are they coming back to us for a different program of study? And so we kind of work with them through all of those steps to kind of ensure a smooth transition after that. We sign travel endorsements, meaning for the holiday break or summer. Summer is technically considered annual vacation for international students, so they are not required to take classes. They can if they choose to. If a student chooses to take summer classes, they can take full-time courses, they can take part-time, they can take all online courses. We are not reporting them within the SEVIS system during summer, so it's kind of whatever they want to do. For students who want to travel back home, we require a form to be filled out that asks where they are traveling to, when they're leaving, and when they are returning, mainly because we cannot allow students to leave before the semester ends, and we can't allow them to come back after the semester starts. So we want the dates to match up. We also want to know where they're traveling, so we have that information. We also require them to be registered for that next semester. Again, we find that if you can, we tell students all the time, take your class schedule with you. Us signing your I-20 stating that we've approved their travel plans is kind of step one, but we feel like if they can take their class schedule with them and say, hey, I've already taken the next step and I'm already registered. Oh, yes, I knew I was going to do that. Then we feel like that is kind of like another thing that they can show if they would be questioned or stopped in the airport or those sorts of things.
I think going back to the sign the travel endorsement area of the second page of the I-20 is critical. So if you know somebody is going to be traveling, if you say make sure you get in to see a DSO to have your I-20 travel authorization signed, again, is critical, because if they don't, they leave, they go home, now they're returning. And if that's not signed, they're going to have problems at customs and border protection when they try to re-enter the United States at the port of entry. So again, that's got to be signed. That's critical. One other thing I want to go back to when we're talking about CPT and OPT, this is about money. It's about being paid. So in particular, I wanted a little caveat about CPT, curricular practical training. And that's only for programs that require a paid co-op or a paid internship. So again, where the CPT comes in, it has to do if something's required in their program, it has to be paid.
And then, as Patrick said before, we monitor part-time employment. We have a form that we have students fill out with their supervisor. And so we just have that on file. So again, it's just something that we're aware of. And then of course, we just serve as a resource for all international students and faculty and staff. So again, if there's any questions or situations or anything like that, just please reach out to one of us, and we can definitely help kind of problem solve that and work through it. And then just some general information. The admissions office admits students to SEC programs. The government does not process admissions or make admissions decisions. The government grants visas. SEC does not. We do not accept international students that have been or will be academically dismissed, suspended, or terminated from another institution. And so those are really working with like transfer students. And so they have to be in good standing, in active status in order for us to work with them on that transfer process. And then potential international students should be referred to admissions and DSOs prior to registration and advising processes. So on this next page, we should have our email. And so essentially just refer students to us, call us, visit us, email us. International admissions at southeast.edu is our general email. And so all of the people that I named previously, we all have access to this email. And so we're checking it daily, or we'll get back to you, anyone within a couple of days. And so this is where we ask that students email us, mainly because we can keep kind of a running document. You know, there's just so many conversations, and this is a nice way to kind of document it and kind of remember what we've already talked about. Yeah, and then of course, just always continue to refer students to campus resources as well. So.
Mary Ann, are you on this call?
Yes, I am.
Do you have anything you want to add as far as what's been shared thus far?
I think you guys did a tremendous job. It's just really about communication. We're really not trying to, penalize the students at all. We just want to make sure that they're successful here, and we all follow the rules, because this is a federal thing that we're working with. And like you joked about in the beginning, we just want to follow the rules, and neither SEC or the students have any trouble.
One other thing, because you've worked with, for Southeast Community College, you've worked with international student athletes far longer than anybody else has. Do you have any additional caveats about working with international student athletes?
I think that probably the best advice for the coaches is, you really plan ahead. Sometimes all of the steps that we have to go through don't happen quickly. And some countries don't have as long of waits to get in for embassy appointments. Some are pretty quick. Some can take a long time. So just, with the coaches, they just really need to communicate with us. If you're thinking about someone, just, talk to us. Like, where are they from? We can kind of look up and give you an idea what the wait list is to get into their embassies once they do get accepted. Because sometimes it may be so far in advance that it's just probably not going to happen.
Okay, thanks, Marianne. And we have plenty of time for questions.
I wanted to address something.
Oh, Shannon's going to address something quick.
Yeah, this is Shannon Ibarra here. I'm one of the DSOs. I just wanted to address something that was not covered in the slideshow about F2 visas. So students who come here and bring their dependents, either a spouse or children, they can bring those dependents in on an F2 visa, and we require that they have extra support for those dependents of $8,000 per dependent. F2 visa holders are able to take classes below full-time, which is below 12 credit hours. They cannot take a program. If they want to take a program here, they would have to change their status to F1 and go through the same process that their spouse
Actually,
parent went through.
Actually, they would not be allowed to go into a program that requires full-time studies.
Exactly.
However, if somebody on an F2 visa wants to go into a program that allows part-time, then somebody could actually be in a program, could graduate from a program, but again, they can never achieve full-time status during that process.
Nor could they apply for OPT at the end either.
Right.
So kind of thinking ahead that way. We do a lot of change of status from like an F2 to an F1. What we have found is change of status requests within the United States take about 18 months to 2 years. Students have the option of leaving the US and going back to their home country and going through the initial process. But again, that's them leaving. Will they be able to re-enter money, those sorts of things. And so a lot of our students will choose to do a change of status within the United States. We usually advise those students to take maybe one class if they're looking at taking classes, or even really just not taking classes until that F1 gets approved, mainly because we've ran into situations where students will take part-time classes, and by the time that their change of status gets approved, they're almost completely done with their program, because we're a 2-year institution, right? So if it takes 2 years, sometimes we run out of time that way. And then what we have found, this actually happened with one of our students, is that you have to be here for 1 full academic year on an F1 in order to apply for OPT. And this this particular student was going to be finished within a semester. And so we worked with the student and got it figured out, but it's just more of trying to figure out all of those different caveats to how is it best going to benefit the student. And so again, those are all just kind of situations that we take one by one.
Speaking of caveats, Jessica, let's talk a little bit about students that want to apply to a healthcare program or any other selection program.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So for students who are outside of the United States, they cannot apply to a healthcare or a program that's on a selection process. Some of our programs on a selection process require prerequisites and others do not. The main reason that we do not allow that is because we can't save a spot for a student in a program if they're outside of the United States, because we don't know how long that visa interview is going to take or when they will arrive. And so
Whether the visa will be granted.
yes, or whether the visa will be granted or not. So we do not allow international students outside of the country, outside of the United States, to apply for a selection process program. Now we encourage them to apply for essentially a health sciences. Once they arrive, they can do their prerequisites or general education courses, and then they can apply for one of those selection process programs once they're here. So does anybody have any questions? We could probably talk all day about different situations and those sorts of things, but we'll open it up for questions.
I have a couple in mind. The first one is like around accommodations. So if international students are wanting accommodations and with the whole healthcare, this is the stuff that you mentioned. Are they still protected underneath this Disability Act or?
Yep.
Okay.
We have quite a few students who have who use accommodations. For example, we have had students that have requested like a leave of absence from their classes due to maybe like health concerns. And so that's something that we require a doctor's note or documentation. And then once we get that, we can work with the student, maybe dropping below full course or even taking a break. But yes, I actually just took an international student over to accommodations a few weeks ago. So,
Okay.
Yep.
That's good.
Yeah. What was your more?
That
No,
was-
that's it. Okay, perfect.
And I would say if an international student arrived on campus, and they were looking for an accommodation like extended time, and because they may have had some type of, let's say, learning disability, that most often that student will not have documentation. And so then we would have them visit with most likely Amanda Stratman to discuss how they could get testing and what the cost of that testing will be, because it can be very expensive. Sometimes we'll have students that will visit seeking accommodations extra time because they don't understand the English, but lack of language acquisition is not a disability, and that could not be accommodated.
Okay.
Yeah, but we would work with, and if a student is seeking how do I gather documentation for a reasonable accommodation, we'd have them work with Amanda.
Okay. So kind of following the language aspect of that, if they do pass that one test, you
The
mentioned,
TOEFL or IELTS.
yeah, if they didn't pass that, they still need like extra support learning the languages. Do we have that support in here? Or
So since SCC doesn't have like our English as a second language program as a full-time program, we cannot issue I-20s for specifically that. Whereas like UNL is a great example, they can. Can students take those classes? Yes, but we can't issue the I-20 just for that. They would have to maintain their full-time status and maybe enroll in those courses if they felt like that was beneficial.
okay.
And if they were taking part-time ESL classes, that would not count toward their full-time credit hour status. So we could not say Yeah, 6 hours of ESL classes plus 6 hours of credit, you're full-time. No, because they're not credit, it's not a credit-based program.
Okay.
And one thing I've been asked about that I guess I'll just I've been asked a few times about from advisors and those sorts of things is so when students are in their classes, right, and we're talking like domestic US students, and they're not doing well, maybe the advisors would encourage them to drop the class or withdraw from the class, right, if it would help benefit. So unfortunately, international students is opposite. And so we can't, if a student's not doing well in their class and they want to drop it and take it next semester, that can't happen if it drops them below full-time. So I don't even like saying this, but it's to maintain their visa status, it's better for a student to fail the course versus drop below full-time status.
No,
And
there-
so it's kind of opposite when advising. So I don't even like saying that, but I've just been asked a few times, so I thought maybe we would.
There is another caveat though, for first semester students, and I'm not talking about transfer students from other US schools. First time initial students in the United States on an initial I-20 coming here, not transferring from another school. In the first semester in, we have a little more flexibility if the student comes and talks to us as far as potentially reducing a course load only for the first semester due to getting used to the US system, maybe understanding the English, or they're struggling. So again, for just that first semester, we have a little more flexibility on initial I-20 students that comes directly to us from abroad.
Okay.
Yeah, but beyond the first semester, if they're still struggling with the language and studying and in the US system beyond the first semester, we cannot reduce their course load below full-time beyond that first semester. After the first semester, reduced course load typically only comes having to do with medical emergencies, things like that. And again, that all has to be documented before we can submit to the government that we're going to reduce the course load for this student for this reason.
So with we mentioned working with international students who happen to, for one reason or another, find SCC, or we do anything now they do attract.
We do not actively recruit at this time. Now that may change. Now certainly coaches have in the past recruited. And we, for a long time, had residence halls, and very nice residence halls on the Milford and the Beatrice campuses. But of course, certainly the vast majority of our international students and our student population in general is on the Lincoln campus. And I think now with the advent of on-campus Lincoln housing, we may do some more active recruitment in the future. But I think that also has to do with conversations dealing with ongoing support and whether we have a truly dedicated international student office, which we don't. So all the DSOs here on the different campuses, working with the international might be 5 to 10% of our job, maybe. And so without that ongoing support, I think the conversations on when do we actively recruit, because now we've got on-campus housing, but I think it also has to do how are we supporting the international students, because we're not set up like a UNL to be able to do that. We'll talk about potential additional resources and funding for those efforts, I think, as we move forward. And I think that'll be a legitimate conversation at that point, especially now with housing. Thank you, Carolee. Great questions. Any questions out there in computer land?
Alrighty,
Does anybody understand that old timey movie reference joke?
only
The
you.
original movie Tron. That's why I call it computer land. Out there in computer land.
Don't even know what you're talking about.
Jessica
right.
doesn't even know what to say about
Nor do I ever really.
that.
All right. Thanks all for joining.
Thank you.